Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters, and debunkers. I came across this from a Twitter link. 3 experiments that prove the Earth is round to celebrate Science Day 2020 by proving the Earth is not flat. So let's have a look at what's being said here and the proposed experiments. If you scroll down here, we've got the usual ridiculous kind of imagery where we've got a CGI globe here, and then this idea that the Earth is a flat disk floating around in space. So of course that immediately sends you off into this false dichotomy. And it says here that flat earthers drive rational people nuts. A physicist even offers 3 experiments to confirm it is those people who are crazy, not you. The experiments, however, do require a belief in mathematics. All right then. So, happy World Science Day. It's been a rough year for old science, which probably hasn't been under attack by so many people since the last Dark Ages. Conspiracy theorists at heart, anti-maskers, anti-vacciners, and perhaps most unbelievably of all, flat earthers have been loudly calling into question the pretty much unquestionable. So when you look at a paragraph like that as an introduction, you can see straight off that, it's one of those things that is unquestionable, isn't it? It's alleged to be an established scientific fact, or I would say manufactured consensus, that the Earth is a spinning globe. And, well, we'll see what these kind of experiments are in a minute. But just think about that. Yeah, we're not allowed to question the science of that's been used to prove the globe. And it goes for those other things I mentioned. We're not allowed to question the science of masks or the science of the gene therapy that is being pushed upon us, that we are being coerced into. So, these people telling you this are not conspiracy theorists. It's a fact that there are conspiracies. People conspire to coerce us into believing certain things, and they pass it off as science. And, you know, under this umbrella of science, which we're not allowed to question, is why we get such dogmatic and what's another word to describe the kind of rhetoric that we're getting here? It's just bigoted, it's single-minded, and it's not scientific. It straight away tells you that you are dealing with people that have a faith and a belief in science. And as this person says, you've got to believe mathematics or believe mathematical models. So, in any event, we'll go on to read this here. Physicist Stephen Wooding, the guy who brought us the contactable alien civilization calculator, another far-out assumption last spring, has offered up a lovely gift for science on its special day, the flat versus round Earth calculator. We'll go and have a look at that in a second. It consists of 3 experiments that can prove to anyone who believes in math that the Earth really is round. We can probably assume, of course, that there are now people arguing that 2 + 2 = 5. Again, a very ironic statement, assuming that those of us who realise that we're not living on a spinning ball and realise that the belief is propped up with mathematical models are deemed as being stupid, unable to do simple mathematics. And of course, that's what they rely on, mathematical models, and the assumption that if you refuse to understand it or refuse to accept it, it's not a case of not understanding it, it's a case of not accepting it as a fact, because it's understood that when it comes to the globe, you're just talking about models. That goes for a lot of the flat earth maps and things that are presented as well. They're not necessarily a truth, they are just a way to represent the land that we know. So, for these folks, we'll point out simply that if the Earth really were flat, cats would have long ago pushed everything over its edge. Another ridiculous statement, very far removed from any actual science, which these people claim to be supporting. So be sure to scroll down to the calculator page and blah blah blah. So at the top of the calculator page is the select an experiment, a drop down menu. Let's start with the sunset twice experiment. So again, remember that this was hailed as a proof that we live on a globe. So the fact that you can see a sunset and then gain height to see another sunset is passed off as proof that we live on a globe, when it's a simple fact of perspective that the higher you go above the surface, the further you can see across that surface. And if the sun has gone off into the distance, usually it's cut off by clouds, even if we can't see those clouds on the horizon, which is very, very thin because it's all very far away, and angular size of those clouds is very small. What actually happens is the sun gets cut off by those clouds. So of course, if you gain height from seeing the sunset and being cut off by the clouds, or even just this band of convergence that we see across the surface, then you will see the sun once more. And here we can see a good example of that in that picture itself. You can see that it's quite hazy here, and the sun is setting. It appears to be setting in this photograph way above what would actually be the horizon, maybe. And that's because it's simply getting cut off by a much thicker, dense layer of air that's just above the surface. Gain height above the surface and you will see the sun again. And you won't be looking down to the sun, and this would apparently be what would happen because the Earth is said to be rolling backwards away from the sun. You actually see the sun in the same place that it is. You just see further because you gain height. I've also done a video on this, so I'll put that video as a link in the description for this one about seeing a sunset twice to explain what I've just said there. So, Wooding notes that you can prove the Earth is round by standing up quickly after the sun goes down and getting ahead of the shadow cast by the horizon, so you can see the sunset a second time. If the planet were flat, once it went over the edge from your first viewing position, it would be gone. So I don't know what they're assuming is what kind of flat Earth model they're referring to there. Are they assuming that we think that there is an edge and then the sun goes down beneath the edge? I mean, again, this just shows a complete lack of understanding of what any so-called flat earther is actually talking about. You may want to find out the time of sunset before testing out the calculator. There are many places online to find this information. Okay, and this gives you a link. To use a calculator, begin by selecting a city in your time zone. Wooding has pre-entered the sunset duration for you, though you can look up the precise value online for your location. So, okay, again, it's not denied that it takes longer for the sun to set in somewhere that's far north of the equator than it does on the equator. I live near the equator in Phuket, and it's dark within 20 minutes of dusk, whereas, of course, that can be a lot longer if you're in the north. But this can be easily explained simply by understanding that the sun is further away, and so our view of it is different. So goes on to tell you how to look up. Well, again, as I said, we'll have a look at the calculator in a minute. So apparently, thanks to the curvature of the Earth, you can make an object on the distant lakeshore. Oh, sorry, we're moving on to the second one there. Right, okay. So, yes, thanks to the curvature of the Earth, you can make an object on a distant lakeshore seem to disappear with a change in viewing height. You'll need binoculars for this one and a lake. The calculator will tell you how much of the object will become unobservable after you fill in the 3 values. And you may also need a boat to do that. And again, this is something that, of course, many people researching flat Earth and looking into this have done. There are many, many, many observations made across water and across land that show we can indeed see much further than the mathematical model for a globe would allow us to do. So, okay, this isn't a proof. It has been thoroughly debunked by many people researching this. And it says for this one, you'll need a cooperative friend who lives... so the next one, this is the third so-called proof of a globe. You'll need a cooperative friend who lives at least some distance away, or a teleporter. Also, 2 sticks and a day with enough sunlight to cast shadows in both locations. This experiment involves measuring shadows cast at 2 different locations and calculating the angle between them to arrive at the Earth's circumference. This experiment is a little advanced mathematically, and Wooding offers a link if you are confused. Again, this goes to the Eratosthenes experiment, which is cited as proof that we live on a globe, assuming that the circumference is around a sphere, when of course you can easily assume that a circumference is around a level Earth, and it's just talking about the circumference of the sun above the equator. So even if you can work out that or calculate the circumference of the sun's path, it doesn't dictate that it's happening above a spherical Earth. It can just as easily be going on above a level plane. So let's now go and have a look at this calculator. So here we go, the flat versus round Earth calculator. This is the drop-down menu that they were talking about. So we've got the 3 experiments here: sunset twice, disappearing object, and stick shadows. So the sunset twice. If the Earth is round, you'll be able to see part of the sun set twice. You do this by moving upwards faster than the shadow cast by the horizon. Let's calculate how much of a second sunset you should see. And there it goes. You've got your location, the sunset duration, and some different things you can put in here: the starting height, travel time, ending height, and the amount you could see. Okay, so fair enough. This might well work out to be true, because the times that the sun sets, the length of time that it takes to set, that's not disputed. It's worth pointing out that nothing about any observation that we make is disputed, whether it is the times or the locations that you can see certain things happening. It is all about interpreting that data. So nothing changes as far as that goes, but it's all down to interpretation. And let's see what it says down here. So this result means that the Earth does seem to be round. Still not convinced? Why not try another experiment? If the Earth is flat, you could never see the sun set twice. That's an unfounded statement. And as I said, all you've got to do, and you can try this yourself on anything, anything that's blocking your view, if you gain a little bit of height, you can see beyond that. We see the same thing with ships that appear to be on the horizon when we have a low elevation. The apparent distance to the horizon will make a ship look like it's sitting on the horizon, and if we get really low to the water, you can even make that ship appear to disappear, because of course you've got lots of disturbance between you and the ship or the boat, and that's when you get very, very low down to the surface and you get all kinds of distortion. Again, these are experiments and observations that have been made across flat or rugged surfaces in nature, and you can see that, of course, the lower down you get, the shorter the distance to the horizon, the higher up you get, the further the distance to the horizon. So when you use the example of a ship, if you have this ship, let's say you're just very close to the surface and you see this ship that appears to be on the horizon, the simple fact that you can then gain height above the surface and then see the horizon rise up with your eye level and appear to extend then beyond the ship and appear to be higher than the ship is a simple proof that what we're looking at is a level surface. We are not suddenly looking down to what was assumed to be this horizon created by curvature. If it was, then you would have to look down. But of course, in the models, that's what you have to assume is happening. But in reality, in real life, when you gain height above the surface, if you've got a a clear view to the horizon, you will see that you'll see more of the surface as you gain height, and you'll see that horizon rise with you, stay at your eye level, and it will stretch into the distance. So this in itself is proof that we are not living on a globe, because on a globe the horizon is supposed to be fixed. It's a fixed geometric sphere. So the moment that you gain height above your original position, you should be looking down, 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 down. Doesn't happen. You look straight ahead and you'll see that the horizon stays at your eye level. Again, there are plenty of videos confirming this. You can even go and look at your own, just go and find some videos of drone footage, and you'll see for yourself that when the drone goes up, that's what happens. You just see across the level surface. Okay, so that's the first experiment. The sunset twice, setting twice doesn't prove anything. And as I said, in fact, it proves the level Earth more. Right, disappearing object. Okay, so this is a very common assumption. By looking at the far shore of a lake at two different heights, you can make an object appear to disappear thanks to the curvature of the Earth. So we've got the usual kind of diagram with this assumption that something or two posts that are plumb are actually diverging like this, and we've got this model of a sphere or a circle, and this assumption that we can see here we've got the observer's height changes and part of the object disappears as the observer changes height. It says measure the distance to the object using a paper map or Google Maps and input it into the first field below. Measure the height of your eye level while standing up and enter it into the calculator. Do this same again, but this time while you are lying down. Try to get as low as possible to maximize the effect. Again, the lower you get towards the surface, the more distortion you're going to see. And the slightest wave or the slightest rise across a rugged surface will create this distortion and cut things off. Again, this is not something that's denied. It is what happens in reality. Again, this is something that a lot of us have looked into. There'll be a link in the description to this video to show you that you can observe this phenomenon happening across a level surface. Again, keep in mind that no surface on the Earth is ever going to be completely smooth. It's like the floor of a supermarket or something, or a warehouse. It's always going to be rugged. There is always going to be distortion. There is always going to be movement going on in the air above the surface. So this adds to the distortion, all these atmospheric properties. It's never going to be totally smooth. And it's those little things on the surface and all those other factors that will literally make things disappear and get cut off from the bottom. But again, this doesn't necessarily happen at exactly the distance that are predicted on these models. But as I pointed out in the past, the apparent distance to the horizon across a level surface does pretty much fit with these calculations, because these calculations refer to the geometry of perspective. And as I said with the horizon just now, when you are low to the surface, the horizon will appear close, but when you gain height above the surface, there is a greater distance that you can see across the surface while the horizon continues to rise with your eye level. Again, this is proof that we're living on a level Earth, not a globe. So while you can convert these mathematical formula into observations, it doesn't mean that we're getting blocked off by a bulge of curvature. Yeah. So that's that one. You can do all that. So let's have a look at this this last one. Stick shadows. So again, we have another model of the Earth or a globe Earth by measuring the length of a shadow cast by a stick at two different points on the Earth's surface. We can find the angle A between them and calculate the distance around the Earth, its circumference. Now, of course, you have to make these assumptions that we've got these parallel rays of light coming in, and you've got this curved surface. But you can get exactly the same results on a level surface with sticks that are pointing up and a local light that is going across it. So if you have, for example, I'll just use these. If you've got two sticks plumb in the ground on a level surface, and you have a light over here, and you move that light across above them, you will of course see a difference in the shadows cast by these two different vertical posts. Yeah, that's just, again, another observation of reality that will give you the same results as is explained here. So none of these three things are proof of a globe. What we're looking at here is models that just assume the model and will only prove the model. All these angles and things like that, of course, they will work. If you start off with a circle and you do your tangent lines and what have you, yeah, you will get very accurate results for your model. And but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what's happening in reality. So, yeah, that's okay. He's gone into a bit more of a thing here, but let's just have a look at the usual rhetoric we've got here. Belief in a flat earth. Amazingly, in the richest, most technological developed country in the world, 1 in 6 of the population are not sure if the earth is round. Of course, the country is the USA, and belief in a flat earth may stem from its highly individualistic culture and a distrust of authority, institutions, and experts. Now, where does that distrust come from? It comes from the fact that when you look into this, so many people have been found out for just telling lies. People lie, and they do so when they are, and we've got this, as this guy said at the beginning, you're not allowed to question this, but when you do, then you face this cancel culture. Flat earthers seem to look at the world all on their own without reference to well over 2,000 years of human discovery. So the usual thing, the usual rhetoric. Apparently someone discovered that the earth was a spinning ball 2,000 years ago, and that sounds just like any other religious spiel to me, because where they are talking about Eratosthenes again, this person that may or may not have existed, and again it refers to this assumption that they're talking about circumference of a sphere rather than the circumference of the earth doing a circle. So it's worth pointing out for the record that I'm not a proponent of any particular model. I'm not, but it's important to understand that no one is trying to say that the earth is some kind of frisbee or pizza dish floating in space. So yeah, we've got a few references here. Mad Mike Hughes, Logan Paul, just a YouTuber, rapper, B.O.K. The usual stuff. The few times that it's made it into the mainstream because of these people. And then we've got a cartoon here. The earth is flat. Evidence that you're wrong. So what evidence? That's the thing. No one has ever actually measured any curvature on the surface of the earth. We've got these 3 experiments that are supposed to prove the earth is round, but all they do is just offer up a preference, a belief, as it said, a belief in a certain mathematical model, when really, if you understand that mathematics is a language that can be used to describe things in all manner of ways. So when these models are used, then they're just one particular explanation, one of many possible explanations, and it can all be just quickly turned around and explained or described with mathematical models in a totally different way. There isn't ever one way of saying it. Yeah. So yeah, it's the usual rhetoric. So there's this reference to this flat Earth model here. Now, again, this is just one of those projections from an azimuth perspective. This may or may not be how the Earth appears to be if we're looking down upon it. No one has ever had that view of the Earth, have they? So we can never really confirm this, and this is just, this so-called ice wall is just an assumption. Once again, it's a model presented to us to have this false dichotomy. Okay. So again, it's referred to as a disk here. Yeah, the thickness of this flat Earth disk is not clear. However, the mass involved must be much less than around Earth, so Earth wouldn't be able to hold on to its atmosphere. So again, you've got you've got this assumption that you know, the Earth's mass or density has some kind of relationship to gravity. Again, this is just a simple understanding that the fact that something falls through the air at a certain rate of acceleration doesn't prove the shape of the Earth. It just allows you to, if you can measure that speed, it just allows you to create a mathematical model of gravity. Yeah. So the actual mass or density of the Earth makes no difference. We could be on an infinite plane that goes on forever, and it wouldn't make our weight on the Earth any different. Yeah. So, it says here the traditional flat Earth model has the sun positioned over the disk, circling around the sky like a baby's mobile, and at much closer distance. That then doesn't explain sunsets and sunrises. Yes, it does, perfectly. Yeah. For some sanity, let's imagine the disk spins like a coin relative to the sun. That would at least get our... Okay, so, oh gosh, they're actually trying to... yeah, so there you go. This person hasn't understood at all, and this is supposed to be from a physicist. Time zones, another thing. Time zones are a human construct. Yeah. So someone's created this computer model. Okay, and we've got the whole idea that the sun never sets. Again, this just ignores perspective and how it really works. When something goes off into the distance, it will reach our horizon. Yeah. So, all right, there you go. You could go and have a look at this yourself and try it yourself. And there's an example of these windmills. So again, as I said, if you look at this and then you can see that this was taken from quite a low elevation. It's a zoomed-in shot of some very distant windmills. But if you gain height, then you will see all of these windmills, and you will see the horizon come up behind these windmills, proving that these windmills haven't gone down some curvature. If that curvature existed objectively, then it would remain so, and you'd be able to see it from various angles. But this is just an optical phenomenon that can be easily understood if you do the simple experiment, gain height above the surface, and you'll see that the horizon then extends way beyond those windmills and will even appear higher than those windmills if you gain more height. Simple observation. And so a scientific way is to account for all these variables and look at it from different angles, not just use one photograph and say, oh, that drop that is apparent beyond the horizon means that there's curvature there. You've got to have faith. That's total faith that the physics of water changes. That there's this trough in the distance just beyond the horizon. All of a sudden, boom, it's all dropping down. Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. So there you go. It's just mathematical models and assumptions about the observations that we make. Okay. It's as I said, nothing actually changes about what we see. It's just a case of understanding that all these explanations have been offered up. And of course, what we don't have amongst all these calculations and models is a simple measurement of actual physical curvature on the surface of the Earth. That's where any assumptions about the Earth being a globe should begin. Someone somewhere should have said, hey, the surface is curving. We must be living on a globe. But no, let's talk about the circumference of the sun and we'll make assumptions about everything that we can see in the sky and make projections and assume that it's a globe. The globe is not based on any factual, demonstrable, practical measurement of any curvature on the surface of the Earth. It's all extrapolated with explanations to fit a narrative, a decision to put the sun at the center of this heliocentric model and assume that the Earth is another planet spinning around the sun to justify night and day, when all of these things they work perfectly on a level Earth. So, it would be wonderful if we could do some real science, and if these so-called physicists could come up with an actual experiment that measures the curvature on the surface of the Earth, rather than talking about things that don't prove anything, except that all you have is a bias and a bigoted view of those who question the so-called science used, or the mathematical models used as proof that we live on a spinning globe. Thank you very much.